Welcome to the Beth and Nicole Show with Kingdom Prominence, where we love to help you elevate God's kingdom in your life. We have my very special guest today, which is my middle son, Luke Porter. We're super excited for you to be with us and excited to hear from him. He's my favorite. If my other kids are watching, they know that's not true, but we're excited to have you.
I'm excited to be here. You've been trying to get me to do this for like 2 months. So
I know. And
we're here.
Finally here. It's awesome.
Yeah. So Luke, you have an awesome testimony, and you have experienced life without Christ and life with Christ, and you've been transformed.
Right.
And your testimony is so exciting and so awesome, and we just want to hear from you about what you've experienced and something that you can share with the generations that are listening. We just want to give you the floor and say, share with us.
So I grew up in a Christian home, obviously. My whole life was, we went to church every Sunday, and I went to church camps, and everyone I was around most of the time was Christian. And I remember, being in like Christian schools, Christian academies, whatever. I was actually homeschooled for, I don't know, like 9 years, something like that. And I fell in love with football, like probably 6th grade, and I would always play outside with my buddies and street football, but I really wanted to play like tackle, like pads, right? And so I decided, I was like, I want to join a team. So I joined a team in my homeschool academy and played there for about 2 years, and didn't really like playing there as much after the first year. And I had a couple buddies who were public schooled, and I actually tried to convince my best friend at the time to come to my homeschool academy to come play with me. And like last minute of that, I think it was it was right before my sophomore year, he actually convinced me to come to public school. And so I ended up going to Keller High School to, play football and go to school there. And I became friends with like a lot of the guys that were, I guess, kind of popular in that grade pretty quickly, because my good friend at the time was pretty popular, and I got a head start on friends, like it was good. And football, I didn't really get to play my first year, so I was a little disappointed. But I think once I got to high school, I kind of stopped caring about football as much, because I was like open to like this new world, like I had never been around like kind of the things that I was opened up to in high school, like vaping, drugs, drinking. Like,
was it culture shock for you?
It kind of was. I didn't like. I think I adapted to it pretty quickly, like not in the wrong way at first.
Right.
But I was like, okay, like, I'm around this stuff, but it doesn't have to like affect me, like all my buddies were vaping at the time, and I didn't vape, I didn't drink, but they, they did. Now, we weren't crazy our sophomore year yet. It was kind of like just getting really introduced to us. But, I just remember being like the one who wouldn't do it, but I would partake in like, like, I don't know, we would do stupid stuff as guys. I mean, I didn't really have a bad mouth before I went to public school, and like immediately I picked up on like the worst mouth. I probably had the worst mouth out of all my friends. I mean, it just came out of nowhere. But I remember kind of the end of my sophomore year, like all my buddies had been, vaping that whole time and drinking. I was just like, I was hanging out with my friend one time, and he was like, dude, you should just hit it like one time, And so I ended up trying vaping for the first time, and I didn't get addicted right away, but I think after about a few days I bought my own, started vaping, became like heavily addicted to vaping. Like I probably, in my entire high school career, I probably spent like at least $2,000 on like vapes.
And people honestly do not realize, they don't think that this is addictive.
Mm-hmm.
They really don't.
Mm-hmm.
They don't think it is. They think it's harmless. It's not a big deal. So, you can even testify, like, it is a big deal. And it is it's a costly thing.
Well, and let's make a note, too. We were clueless. Like, they were really good. You were really good at hiding it,
Yeah,
too,
that's what I was going to say, too.
Like, we were clueless.
I was very good at hiding it. Because, I had always been able to hide stuff just because, like, I'm a very careful person as it is. Not, like, in always hiding stuff, but more of just, like, I would say I'm not an analytical person, but I'm an analytical person when it comes to, like, decision making and, like, kind of, like, what I'm doing. Like, I work valet, right? Mm-hmm. Everything's, like, calculated and driving so I don't mess up ever. I've never gotten in a wreck at valet. Every other employee at my company's gotten in a wreck. There's probably a couple people that haven't, but to say that, like, I was very, like, okay, I'm going to put it here for, like, a couple weeks, and then I'll move it, right? So I'd hide it in my closet.
You calculated it.
Yes.
Innovative. Very innovative.
Yes. I would think about, okay, like...
And Mom's clueless.
Right.
Yeah.
When all my buddies, they'd just be, like, they would just leave it on, like, their desk, or they'd put it under a shirt, or put it in their pillow. Like, I wasn't like that. I was like, okay, if my mom comes in here to put my clothes up or leaves laundry in my room, okay, if she goes right here, she could find it. Like, so I was very like that, But anyway, like, I got heavily addicted to vaping, and I think everyone who, like, starts vaping, they always, like, I lied to myself all the time, like, oh, I can quit whenever I want, right? Like, oh, like, if I wanted to, I could quit right now. I told myself that for probably 2.5 years of, like, vaping. I literally was like, oh, I can quit whenever I want. And all my friends knew I was the worst one, too. Like, everything I picked up, probably besides alcohol, I was the worst at. Like, I was probably, like, whenever I didn't have money, I would just hit my friends, like, and they would be like, dude, go get your own, like, that kind of thing, But I remember, like, really being, like, in bondage to it. I thought about it all the time. Like, first thing I did in the morning was hit my vape. Last thing I did before I went to bed was hit my vape. When you're in school, you can't really vape unless you want to go to the bathroom and risk getting caught, You would, as soon as you get out of school, I'm going to go hit my vape. It was like that,
I think it's important to note, too, that we didn't even, we were clueless, but yet this was the exact time we started to notice you really pull away from the family. And, like, we were fighting you to go to church. We were like, no, and it was like, we didn't realize what it was tied to. We just thought it was teenage stuff,
Right. I think a lot of it was just influence from my friends and their, like, families. Like, I saw how they operated and how my friends operated, and I was like, I don't, like, they don't go to church. Like, it would be hard for me to meet people. Like, I think a lot of my mindset too was like, I have friends here. Like, I don't need to go make friends at church. Like, I think I tried a couple times to go to youth group, and I never connected with anyone. Never really, like, found a home in terms of church. Like, but I do remember every Sunday morning, like, I knew you were gonna try to get us to go to church, so I would, like, try to think of an excuse or try to stay at a friend's house the night before. Always try to get out of it, like, whatever I could do. Maybe, like, hoping that you'd forget that it was Sunday morning. Like, literally, I did not want to go.
And that was the enemy.
Oh, big time.
The enemy planting seeds and thoughts in your mind to make you not want to. He didn't want you to have freedom. Right. He likes you in that bondage. The enemy did. And so he was putting all these thoughts in your mind, and you're thinking, this is not my kid. This is not him at all.
Right.
So she could see, but didn't know what it was.
Right.
So I just think it's important to say, the enemy is a real thing, and he really does put thoughts in our minds and try to convince us of things and help us try to figure out ways to stay in bondage.
Right. Like, start of vaping, as soon as that, I remember, like, that starting, like, whenever I started vaping, that's when I started, like, I drank a couple times, like, with my buddies, and then I was like, oh, like, this isn't that bad. Like, I think I lied to myself a little bit, like, this isn't that bad, And I remember, I knew vaping was bad for you, but I was like, if I did it for just, like, a couple weeks, like, it's not going to hurt me, Little did I know, 2.5 years would go by.
And that's why they call it the gateway drug.
It is.
It's like a gateway. It's a gateway to all the other things.
Okay, and little do y'all know, he's going to be mad at me for saying this, but his whole life up until that point, he would rail on people that were drinking. And then a funny story.
And smoking.
Yeah. A really funny story. This is when he was little, but we were at my sister's house, and Kirk was way out in the field, and he was sucking on a sucker. And you're going to be mad that I'm sharing this. And Luke is looking out there, and he goes, Dad, are you cigaretting? We still laugh about that today. But this was the kid that we grew up with, and then that's why it was so drastic. You know?
Yeah, I mean, all of that stuff kind of like, it definitely changed me. I was definitely, when I went to high school, I definitely changed. Like, I was not the same person as I was before. And I think I even noticed that probably my junior year. Because I remember when I was a kid, like, I believed in Jesus. Like, I never really read my Bible that much, only at, like, church camp and, like, youth, you know? I remember when I was a little kid, we had that rabbit that got loose in the yard, and you were, like, chasing after her, like, she could not catch it. Mm-hmm. And she was like, who am I going to call? Who am I going to call? And I was like, call on Jesus. He's a mighty God. And the rabbit, like, turned around, ran towards me, and dropped at my feet and rolled over.
Wow. Literally.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
I was like 6 or 7 at the time. Wow. But I had, like, stuff like that happening when I was a kid. And then once I got out of church, started, you know, becoming more worldly, all that stuff kind of, like, I kind of forgot about that stuff, you know?
Okay, so tell us, like, when did you hit, like, the rock bottom part of your life where you were like, okay, something's got to give, something's got to change? Like, when did that hit you?
My senior year, or after my senior year in that summertime, pretty much my entire, like, high school, like, career, I kind of chased popularity. I was, like, always trying to, like, be, like, a part of the group, a part of the, like, be at the parties, you know, get invited to parties, like, all that.
So it was kind of identity.
Yes.
This whole thing that you've shared with us was you trying to fit in.
Yes.
And trying to find, like, where's my place? Where do I belong?
Absolutely.
What's my identity? Who am I? And you were trying to figure it out.
Right.
That makes sense to me. That makes total sense to me. Okay, so now tell us where you hit the spot where you're like, okay, this isn't who I am.
Yeah.
This isn't for me.
So I chased popularity, and finally, like, senior year, like, what I felt was like I, like, achieved it. I started getting invited to parties. I started hanging out with, like, new people who were, like, super popular, and I in my mind, like, achieved popularity. And then I realized, I was like, oh, this is stupid, you know? And I started going to parties every weekend, and again, like, they had, like, no idea. Like, I was going to sleep over at other people's houses, and, like, kind of the summer after my senior year, I kind of was like, one night in my room, I was looking back at, like, everything that had happened, like, over kind of high school. I had just broken up with, like, my ex-girlfriend, and I was like, okay, you know, my friends are about to leave for college. I'm staying here. Like, what's going to happen, you know? And I just remember, like, being in my room, crying out to God, just, like, basically telling, like, I surrender. Like, whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. Like, just show me what you want me to do, and I'll do it. Like, just surrendering. Right. But I started to read my Bible, trying to read my Bible, like, every night, trying to pray more, like, really kind of, like, trying, like, not being, like, religious, but more like, okay, like, how do I start to, like, bring God into my life, you know? Because I think that night it really, like, God changed me there a little bit, and I started to, like, be obedient without even knowing it, you know? Mm-hmm. So I started reading the Bible, and I remember I was in my room, and I was, like, praying. I felt God's presence, like, come on me, like that. And I didn't know what was happening at first, and I was like, this must be what God's presence feels like. And I just remember, like, my whole body, like, I literally felt like I was, like, I don't even know how to explain it. Like, I was just, like, there was, like, light in me. Like, it was crazy.
Wow.
And I always forget about that. Like, I don't even think I've told, like, Peyton that before. I don't even think I told you that before. But I just felt, like, just, like, light. And, like, I felt like, I like, in my mind, I was like, I think this is, like, God's presence, you know? And so I had that happen. And then I was at my buddy's house, and we were drinking, and I was like, getting ready for bed, and my buddy was getting ready for bed, and I was like, oh shoot, like I need to read my Bible. And I had it on my phone. I prayed, I asked God, I said, God, I want you to speak me through your word, right? And so I was like, hey, I was to my friend, I was like, hey, pick a random verse. And he picked Jeremiah 29:12, which is, and then you will come to me and pray to me, and I will listen to you. And like instantly I was like, oh my gosh, like that's crazy, you know? Like I thought that was like the coolest thing in the world, you know? Pretty much all my friends were gone at college, and I had a couple that were still around, but I didn't really hang out with them that much. So I was really kind of just like in this place where I was like, okay, like what now, you know? Because like my whole past like 3 years was revolved around friends and like you hanging out, just like doing a bunch of nothing, you know? And I was like, okay, well, like, you know, what's gonna happen? So like a week later, I was in my I think it was like a Saturday. No, yeah, it was like a Saturday, and then the next morning, on Sunday morning, I woke up and like literally all I can remember is like having no like, or realizing it was almost like a like conviction came in, like my conscience like came alive, like I realized like, oh, all this stuff I've been doing is not good, you know? So it was like the taste for like nicotine was like dead, like off my tongue. Like I didn't even like crave it anymore. It was wild.
Wow. It was like you got delivered.
Yeah, no, it was. Like I didn't know what that was at the time, but I was just like, I don't even like feel like hitting my vape anymore. And I went, what was funny was I went in my closet. I didn't feel like vaping, but I picked it up. And I didn't know this like kind of stuff at the time, but it's just like that kind of stuff. It's like a stronghold, you know. So I picked it up. I was like, oh, maybe I could hit it one more time. But I was like, no, I'm not gonna do that. I literally threw it away, never touched it again. And another thing I was like, I never want to drink ever again. I literally picked up my phone, deleted all my garbage music that I was listening to. She can tell you, like, I did not listen to music, but that was something I was convicted about. Like in that moment, like I was like, oh, like. The music I've been listening to is like garbage. What's funny is I had a playlist at the time that just said like Jesus on it. It was like 3 songs on the playlist. I'd never touched it. I just made it one day like randomly and never listened to it. I was like, I'm gonna start listening to this and start to just add to it.
Wow. So how long was it from the time that you had that encounter to the conviction? Like what was the time frame where it was like all of a sudden you were like, wow, like I don't want any of this? What do you think the time frame was? Because you had talked
from when I was like in my room that night.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly.
I feel like something happened there. You know?
Yeah. No, that's because what's crazy was I didn't realize. I kind of forgot about that. Whenever that happened, I like forgot about it, and then whenever I had that like that morning when I woke up and like didn't want to do that stuff anymore, I like remembered almost. It was kind of weird. Like I remembered what had happened. You know, like what I said. You know.
And was that the same morning that I remember I was out, like I normally like to do, out on the patio, and I was reading. It was like 6:30 in the morning on a Sunday, and you had come out, and I was like, what are you doing here? And I don't know if you remember this, and you came and sat down, and you asked some random Bible question. I was like, because you had not done that in a long time.
Yeah, that was that morning, I think.
Yeah, and then you were gone. Next thing I know, you're sitting on the couch ready for church. I remember thinking like, okay, you're ready for church?
I was like, yeah, I was like, I need to get in church. Another thing too, like not so, because the scripture in Ezekiel 36:26, it's like, I'll give you a new heart. I'll take your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. I'll take your old spirit, I'll give you a new spirit and put my spirit within you, right? So he takes like all the bad stuff and then he puts like his desires in you, right? So not only did I like lose like all these like ungodly desires, but I gained like I had an overwhelming desire to like to know God and like get into the Word and pray. Like I didn't have it and then I had it. Like it was kind of like that.
Like a supernatural hunger.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's I realized like very quickly like that you can't just get it. Like you can't just like religiously get hungry for God. Like it has to be like God gives you that desire, you know, whenever you surrender.
Amen.
Yeah.
And I started to just, the only thing I knew what to do was just to read and pray. That's all I knew how to do, you know? So I just started doing that. I started asking them a bunch of questions like every day, all day. And how about you say what you noticed like right away? Because I remember you telling me like because I didn't even tell y'all what happened to me right away. I think I waited like 3 or 4 days because I was kind of like struggling with some stuff like mentally, like because all this stuff was like new and I didn't know what was kind of going on, you know. And I finally was just like, I need to tell my parents because maybe they can like help me out or whatever, you know.
Well, I was just gonna say one of the biggest things I remember is that because there was so many years, I mean a good few years where, because you and I were so close growing up, I mean I homeschooled you, and all of a sudden there was this period of time where it was like, Luke doesn't like me anymore. Like, what have I done to offend him? You know, you didn't want to be in front of me. You weren't really having conversation with me anymore. You were distant. You were always in your room. But again, Kirk and I were like, well, it's just teenage stuff. And how are we going to help this kid get through some, what's he struggling with, blah, blah, blah. So the biggest thing that I noticed was this countenance, because you always walked around mad, angry, almost like you were offended to even be a part of the family anymore. It was like this very weird look on your face that was not Luke, and then all of a sudden your countenance was completely different. Wow. I mean, there was like you described it a minute ago as light, which I've never heard you actually share that, which is amazing, but that's what it was. It was like this joy, this presence. I mean, I'm talking like from night to day.
I can remember that a little bit. Like I remember feeling like the best I'd ever felt, like in terms of like, I just felt like all the stuff that I cared about like didn't matter anymore, Like all the stuff that I was just like dealing with just didn't matter.
You had freedom.
Yeah.
It's literally like right. You realize, okay,
So
I was striving to fit in this world, and I was having all this bondage to be there, and it was like God just came in and it set you free. And
right.
You're like, I don't need that stuff. Like, I did all that I needed to get to the top of that group. And then you got there and you're like, this is dumb. Like,
right.
What? This isn't even worth what I went through. And it's like God set you free. You had freedom. And it was like, you were like, wow, this is peace. Yeah. This is freedom. This is amazing. And that's right. Deliverance. Mm-hmm. Like, God literally removed strongholds. And it's just incredible.
I think what's been amazing to watch is, you described it a minute ago, of like supernatural hunger, but what the gift that God has given you to actually, because you're hungry to read the word, but it's not even that you're hungry to read. God has like poured out mature wisdom in you. You're still so young, but we have seen such a maturity in the word and your retention of being, I mean, like things I'm like, how did you know that? Like, I don't even know that scripture. I should know that scripture, Yeah. But yet you know it, and you can just say it, and you speak into things with scripture. I think that is so cool that God has poured out that maturity. It's the only way I can describe it, in the word.
And share with the people, the viewers, what you're doing now, and just how you have your own show. You've been teaching. I mean, it's incredible. Like, you completely transformed yourself, but you're, like your mom said, you have a call to teach, you have a call to evangelism, you have a call to media, you have a lot of gifts. So tell us, like, what does that look like for you now? And
yeah, so I actually just got married, number one, and I was doing a YouTube channel with some of my buddies. We all kind of had it was at the beginning of this year in like January, and we were doing it for a couple months, and then we stopped because like first person got married, and then I was getting married, then our other friend moved to Louisiana, so we just kind of got
a shift.
Yeah.
A shift.
But I started my own channel, and I started growing it, and I'm still working on some other stuff too. Yeah. But God's been showing me a lot of stuff. I feel like I'm in kind of God's just been showing me a lot of new things, especially with like marriage and like loving another person and living with another person. But yeah, I had a small group for like a year with high schoolers that are all now in college, which makes me sad. But
for that time, you made a difference. You
yeah.
know, what was cool was to see you walk out. Here God you had an encounter. He changed you. And then you begin to act it out. And we know, I mean, because we're older than you, that those seasons, right? He grows you, he moves you to a new season, he moves you to new things. You're married now, and so I'm excited just to see where where you guys
Yeah.
together even may,
Yeah.
you know, have a
Definitely.
ministry or what.
Our favorite pastor is actually starting a church here in Fort Worth. It opens October 1st, so we've already signed up for like everything that we, you know, I'm already signed up for youth, outreach. She signed up for worship and youth, so.
Yeah, and your wife is a singer.
Yes.
She's a worship leader.
She's very talented.
She's
yes.
awesome. And both of you have a call, and I've already told you, you both have a call to media, but you are going to be powerful together, the two of you. And that's what's cool is that God prepared you, and you had your small group, but that's like a preparation for the bigger and the greater. Right. And now with your wife, you guys are going to have a ministry together. It's exciting. I'm excited to see what God's going to do. It's going to be powerful.
I thought I'd share too really quick just because it's an encouragement and it's a shout out to one of our favorite, they're not family members, but they might as well be family. But I can remember when Billy and Darlene Hunch were here. They were missionaries from Africa.
Oh, right.
And we're going to have y'all on our show, by the way. I haven't told you yet. But they come and visit when they come in. And Luke, at the time, now this is before really you had any,
Wait, can I say this?
Yeah.
So it was at night, but the night before I went to OU.
Mm-hmm.
I was literally going back to my friend's house, but I had to come here and get like my stuff. And they were downstairs. And Billy was on the couch, and I think you and Darlene were like in the kitchen. No, y'all were in the living room, and you were like trying to get them to like
because I wanted you to hang out. Yeah, I wanted you to
And I did not want to
visit.
be there. I did not want to be there. I was like, I'm trying to go back and get drunk and like do whatever, you know? And so he was talking to me, and well, I just walked in, and I was like, hang on, let me go get my stuff upstairs. I got my stuff, came back down, and like, oh, what were you doing? And I was like, oh, I was just, I was fishing, about to go back to my house. And my dad was like, oh, Luke's a big fisherman or whatever. And then Billy looks at me and he goes, oh, fisher of men. And I was like, huh? And I didn't even know what that meant, And I was just like, okay,
Wow.
That had a huge impact on me. Like, I didn't know it at the time, but it was like, he had like spoken.
It was impartation.
Yeah.
He prophesied it.
Yeah, he really did.
He prophesied it, declared it, and it was like the seed that God then was able to water and it to come to life.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
exactly.
Yeah,
It's
it was
really
so
cool.
cool.
It's cool.
Yeah, I love it. That's awesome. Well, we thank you.
Yes,
as long
thank
as
you
it's
for
taken us.
finally coming and talking to us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we're excited for where God's going to take you. It's
I am
awesome.
too.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, for sure. Well, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.